Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm trying to grow my channel, so I'd really appreciate if you could subscribe, as I'd love to get to 1,000 subscribers. Okay, so today we're going to look at the comparative study under the mode of cultural context or social setting. And the two texts we're going to compare are Eclipsed, written by Patricia Burke-Brogan, and Brooklyn. Okay, so let's start off. Social setting, cultural context means looking at the society of that time. So we start off by telling the examiner the first text I studied for the comparative study is the drama Eclipsed, written by Patricia Burke-Brogan. It takes place in St. Paul's Home for Penitent Women, part of the Magdalen Laundries in Ireland. The opening and closing scenes are set in 1992, after the laundry has closed down. All the other scenes take place in 1963, when the Magdalen Laundry was actually open. So here are some aspects of the social setting. First one we will look at is abuse of women by men, and we'll look at some of the key moments. Okay, so society at that time was very male dominated. Men had a lot of power and were often not punished for their abuse. They also often walked away if their girlfriends became pregnant. If a girl had a baby outside of marriage, it was a terrible and shameful event. If the man did not stand by his pregnant girlfriend and agree to marry her, she was in serious trouble and could easily find herself locked away in a Magdalen home. Men did not have to take any responsibility for the pregnancy. If John Joe had stayed with Bridget, and if Richard had married Mandy, then they would not have been sent to the laundry. Many of the Magdalen girls were unmarried mothers. They were forced to give up their babies for adoption. They were locked away in those terrible laundries because they were seen as fallen women. This shows me that women who got pregnant outside of marriage were punished by society back then, but the men who got them pregnant were not punished at all. Nellie Nora was sexually abused by her employer. Nellie Nora gets very agitated when Bridget suggests she puts on a bit of war paint or makeup. She cries out, he made me wear lipstick and perfume. Another aspect of the social setting or cultural context was that women had to look good for men. Here are some key moments. Mandy imagines that Elvis will come from America and take her away from that terrible Magdalen Laundry. All the other girls pretend that Elvis will come and see Mandy in her long lacy dress and fall madly in love with her. When the girls try to cheer Mandy up by having a mock wedding, they dress the mannequin up like a big shot film star. They tell her to pretend he has beautiful black shiny hair and tell her that he is asking you to marry him, Mandy. A third aspect of social setting was that religion punished the girls but not the boys. And here are some key moments. These Magdalen laundries were run by religious nuns who forced the girls to pray, be silent, and work hard. The priests made the girls' families feel that their daughter had disgraced themselves and their families and brought shame on the community because of their sexual behaviour. The men were never blamed, even if they left the girl when she became pregnant. Bridget finds out that John Joe, the father of her child, is getting married next week, and Mandy's boyfriend Richard never spoke to her again after she told him she was pregnant. On hearing Mandy's story, the bitter Bridget tells her, "Bastard, didn't I tell you, Mandy? Love is a trick." Another feature of society at that time was gossip. Here are some key moments. Bridget describes the canon's housekeeper who likes gossiping. The canon's housekeeper bossed everyone in the parish, bossed him too, listened to all the gossip and gave the orders, pointing at us with her scarlet fingernails. Bridget describes what life was like in her home place of Kilnamona. She talks about the gossiping and hypocrisy that was common in her native place. Another huge aspect of the social setting was the power of the Catholic Church. Key moments. The Catholic Church had a very strong power over the people in the Ireland of the 1960s. Bridget describes the canon in her home place, standing at the back of the dance hall and watching what was going on like a policeman. On Sundays he'd shout, "Company keeping is a mortal sin. Hell for all eternity." Bridget also mentions when Ellen Moran got pregnant, the canon walked up and down outside her house in broad daylight saying the rosary. This was his way of putting pressure on the family. Because of this pressure, usually the father or a brother would sign the pregnant girl into a Magdalene home. The Magdalene laundries were businesses that made money for the bishops. We hear Mother Victoria on the phone to the bishop telling him that she is working on the ledgers now and that she will send a check to him the next day. The church saw fallen women as dangerous to society. Key moments. Mother Victoria believes that the women in the laundry can't be trusted. She believes that they are weak, with no control, because they got pregnant. They are sinners, fallen women in her eyes, and therefore do not deserve her sympathy. We protect them from their passions. Mother Victoria quotes St. Paul saying, "People who do wrong will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. People of immoral lives, fornicators, adulterers. Women tempt men. Remember the garden? Eve started it all." These church ideas made lots of laws that were damaging to women. The Magdalene laundry system is a very good example of what can happen in a society that is controlled by people who hold such prejudiced views against women. Ireland was slow to change. Key moments. Mother Victoria gives out to Sister Virginia for writing a letter to the bishop, inviting him to come and see the terrible conditions the girls in the laundry were in. Sister Virginia says, "It takes a long time for news of change to reach this island, this laundry." Mother Victoria was not happy with change or with Sister Virginia's modern ideas, and she feels puzzled and worried by the fact that during my 30 years in this community, I've never come across such impudence. We will now look at the second text under the same headings of cultural context or social setting. We're going to look at Brooklyn. So we start off our answer. The second text I studied was the film Brooklyn, directed by John Crowley. It is set in both Enniscorthy, County Wexford, and Brooklyn, an area in New York in the 1950s. We will now look at some aspects of the social setting. So first of all, there was a lack of opportunity and a huge amount of immigration. Key moments. There were not many job opportunities in Ireland. A large number of young people had to emigrate to England or America to find work. Travel in those days was very expensive. This made it difficult for people to return home for visits to see their families, especially from America. That is why the scene where the people on the dockside are waving goodbye to the young people who are leaving on the ship is so sad. In many cases, those leaving Ireland for America might never see their families or friends again. Second aspect is people wrote letters back then. Key moments. Communications in the 1950s was very different to what it is today. People wrote letters and sent them by post. It often took weeks for a letter to arrive in America from Ireland. We see Eilish waiting anxiously for letters to come to her from home. Mrs. Kehoe, her landlady, the strict but kind-hearted landlady in the boarding house, tells Eilish over dinner that she's glad to see that you finally got some letters from home today, Eilish. Eilish is so excited that she jumps to her feet, but Mrs. Kehoe tells her that they'll still be there after dinner and makes her finish her meal first. Eilish is overcome by loneliness and homesickness when she reads of all the news from home. We see Eilish in tears as she reads the letters from home. She later writes to her sister Rose, I have a boyfriend, don't tell Mammy. Tony sends many letters to Eilish, but she doesn't open them as she is falling in love with Jim Farrell. Another aspect of social setting of Brooklyn is the negative side of religion. Key moments. Religion played a central role in the lives of most Irish people in the 1950s. In the opening scene, Eilish is on her way to attend Mass with her boss, Miss Kelly, and her work colleague, Mary. Miss Kelly expects her staff to attend Mass on Sunday mornings before they start work. Miss Kelly pretends to be religious, but she treats her staff and customers and her poor customers badly. Well, there are also some positive sides of religion in Brooklyn. Key moments. The Irish in Brooklyn are also very connected to their parish, and religion is important in their lives. Mrs. Kehoe, the Brooklyn landlady, keeps in touch with Father Flood. Every Christmas, the Brooklyn parish organises a dinner for old men from Ireland who are alone and in poor circumstances. Father Flood asks Eilish to help at the parish hall and help serve the men their Christmas dinner. Father Flood represents the positive side of Catholic religion. Mrs. Kehoe made the girls say a prayer before meals. When Rose dies, Father Flood comforts Eilish. She'll be watching over you every day for the rest of your life. He also allowed Eilish to use his phone to call her grieving mother. Back then, discrimination was based on wealth. Key moments. Enniscorthy has people from different social classes. People are treated differently depending on their wealth. Miss Kelly treats her customers in the key scene in her shop on Sunday morning. There are favourite customers such as rich Mrs. Brady, who gets served before the others. When a customer asks for shoe polish, she's given out to by Miss Brady for ordering an item, that should be Miss Kelly. She's given out to by Miss Kelly, shop owner, for ordering an item that was not, in her opinion, a Sunday item. This scene shows us the snobbish class distinction that was in many Irish towns and cities in those days. It is very different in Bartocci's store where Eilish worked in Brooklyn. Every customer is treated the same, and Eilish is expected to make every customer feel happy and welcome at the store. Another aspect of social setting was gossip. Key moments. People in Ireland liked to gossip. Miss Kelly tells Eilish that she has heard that there is lots of talk about you and young Jim Farrell. Eilish replies that you know what people are like. They love to talk. Miss Kelly then goes on to say that Mrs. Brady, a customer in the shop, had a letter from her niece who lives in Brooklyn, telling of a girl from Enniscorthy who got married to an Italian. Eilish tells Miss Kelly that she had forgotten what this town is like, showing that she doesn't like gossiping. She also asks Miss Kelly, what were you planning to do? Keep me away from Jim Farrell? Stop me going back to America? We will now look at the female roles in Brooklyn. Key moments. An important aspect of social setting is the role played by men and women in society. Many of the women in this film are seen as typical female stereotypes of the time. The girls in Mrs. Kehoe's lodging house all work in typical female jobs. They work in large department stores such as Webster's and Bartocci's. Eilish is a little different because she has ambitions to become a bookkeeper and later an accountant. Girls had to look nice for men. Key moments. A girl's appearance was very important. Mrs. Kehoe tells Eilish that by the look of you, you have greasy skin. What do you do about that? Later, when Tony asks Eilish to go with him to the beach at Coney Island, the girls advise her to choose her bathing costume with great care. Girls had to look nice for men. Many girls needed to marry a man to improve their life. Key moments. All the girls wanted to find boyfriends who will eventually make good husbands. At the start of the film, Eilish is at a dance with her friend Nancy. Eilish tells Nancy, he looked over here twice already. He is walking over here now. The girls at the boarding house all attend the Saturday night dance at the parish hall in the hope of meeting a fella. Sheila tells Eilish that she certainly would get married again. That's why I go to that wretched dance every week. Eilish is a little bit more independent-minded. She wants to eventually qualify as an accountant and have a good job with an independent income of her own. Role of men. Key moments. Tony is a stereotypical male. He works as a plumber, a typical male profession. He holds typical male ideas about family. He sees himself as the provider and presumes that when he marries, he will have children. He explains that if she marries him, she could live out here on Long Island, and that he plans to set up a construction company with his brothers. Tony pressurizes Eilish into marrying him before she returns to Ireland after Rose's death. So we've looked at the key moments of social setting in Eclipsed, and now we've just looked at the key moments of social setting in Brooklyn, and what we're going to do now is make some comparisons. Comparisons meaning similarities and differences. So some comparisons between the two. Okay, so we'll start off with men had the power. Key moments. In Eclipsed, it was men that got the girls pregnant and left them when they found out. If John Joe had stayed with Bridget, and if Richard had married Mandy, then they would not have been sent to the laundry. Nellie Nora was sexually abused by her employer. Nellie Nora gets very agitated when Bridget suggests she puts on a bit of war paint. The men were never blamed, even if they left the girl when she became pregnant. Bridget finds out that John Joe, the father of her child, is getting married next week, and Mandy's boyfriend Richard never spoke to her again after she told him she was pregnant. In Brooklyn, the world is also male-dominated. I've put in the word also as a comparative word in red. Women are encouraged to believe that they must marry a man in order to progress. The girls at the boarding house all attend the Saturday night dance at the parish hall in the hope of meeting a fella. Dolores, a Cavan girl, tells Eilish that I'd love to meet a fella. This reinforces the stereotypical idea from the era that all girls want to find boyfriends who will eventually make good husbands. Okay, women had to look good for men. Key moments. In Eclipsed, all the girls pretend that Elvis will come and see Mandy in her long lacy dress and fall madly in love with her. Nellie Nora tells us that her employer made her put on makeup to look nice for him. She cries out, he made me wear lipstick and perfume. Comparative word, this is similar to Brooklyn, when the girls advise Eilish to choose her bathing costume with great care. And Mrs. Kehoe tells her, "It is the most Tony will ever have seen of you, Eilish, and you don't want to put him off." Gossip features in both texts. Key moments. In Eclipsed, Bridget describes the Canon's housekeeper who likes gossiping. The Canon's housekeeper bossed everyone in the parish, bossed him too. Listened to all the gossip and gave the orders, pointing at us with her scarlet fingernails. Bridget describes what life was like in her home place of Kilnamona. She talks about the gossiping and the hypocrisy that was common in her native place. Comparative word, this is very similar to Brooklyn, where Miss Kelly is a gossip and likes to put her nose into other people's private lives. When the entire town is gossiping about Eilish and Jim Farrell and their developing relationship, Miss Kelly finds out through a gossipy letter from her niece in Brooklyn that Eilish has a husband there. She then tries to hurt Eilish when she reveals the fact that she knows about Tony. Eilish stands up to her and proudly tells her that her name is Eilish Farello and that she has forgotten what this town is like. Religion features in both texts. Key moments. In Eclipsed, the Catholic Church had a very strong power over the people in Ireland. Bridget describes the canon in her home place standing at the back of the dance hall and watching what was going on like a policeman. On Sunday he would shout, "Company keeping is a mortal sin, hell for all eternity." Bridget also mentions when Ellen Morgan got pregnant, the canon walked up and down outside her house in broad daylight saying the rosary. This was his way of putting pressure on the family. Because of this pressure, usually the father or brother would sign the pregnant girl into a Magdalene home. Mother Victoria believes that the women in the laundry are sinners, fallen women. Mother Victoria says women tempt men. Remember the garden? Eve started it all. These church ideas made lots of laws that were damaging to women. The Magdalene laundry system is a very good example of what can happen in a society that is controlled by people who hold such prejudiced views against women. This is different in Brooklyn. We're making comparison here because we see a more positive side of the Catholic Church. Father Flood does his best to help his parishioners. He shows us the more caring and compassionate side of Christianity. When a wealthy parishioner seeks forgiveness, Father Flood gets him to pay the night school fees for Eilish as a penance. Father Flood arranged for Eilish to come to Brooklyn. He comes to help her get her over her homesickness during her first few difficult months away from home. He also helps the poor old men left behind in New York by providing a Christmas dinner for them every year. Now, warning, do not try to memorize all this answer. You do not need to use all these key moments in your answer. Read your question carefully, and sometimes you need only use one key moment. Once again, I'd like to remind you that I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel, so I'd really appreciate if you could like, subscribe and share, and best of luck in your exams.